Viktor Romanov was a man the world both admired and feared. His fortune stretched across continents, skyscrapers in New York, oil fields in the Middle East, vineyards in France. Yet behind the golden gates of his sprawling estate, his life was ruled not by business, but by a single fragile truth: his only daughter, Eliza, had been born blind. Or so he believed. From the moment the doctors delivered the devastating diagnosis, Viktor's world shifted. He built Eliza's life within velvet walls, filling her nursery with soft toys, braille books, and the finest tutors money could buy. Every step she took was monitored, every corner of the house carefully designed to prevent harm. Viktor rarely allowed her to leave the mansion, claiming the outside world was too dangerous for someone as delicate as her. Eliza grew up in a bubble of luxury, gold chandeliers above her, marble beneath her feet, silk dresses hugging her small frame, but she lived in darkness, or at least that was what everyone thought. The staff whispered when Viktor wasn't listening. Poor child, locked away like a prisoner, the cook would sigh. The butler would shake his head, muttering, what use is all this wealth if she can't see it? Yet no one dared question Viktor. His word was law, and anyone who crossed him was swiftly dismissed. Among the staff, only Rosa, a young maid from a humble village, dared to see Eliza not as a fragile doll but as a lonely girl aching for companionship. Rosa had a gentle way about her, a softness that made Eliza open up in ways she never did with others. She would read fairy tales to her at night, her voice filling the vast, echoing room with warmth. Sometimes she would describe the gardens in detail, the roses climbing the stone walls, the swans gliding across the pond, painting vivid pictures with words so Eliza could imagine them. But Rosa began noticing something strange. At first, it was subtle, the way Eliza's eyes followed the movement of candle flames, how her head turned precisely when someone entered the room, even before they spoke. One evening, as Rosa dusted a bookshelf, she deliberately knocked a book to the floor. To her surprise, Eliza bent down and reached straight for it, her hand landing on the cover without hesitation. Rosa's heart skipped. Could it be? The moments kept adding up. Eliza would pause while walking, her gaze lingering on patterns in the carpet as if admiring them. She sometimes laughed at the expressions on Rosa's face during storytelling, though no one had ever taught her to see expressions. Each observation gnawed at Rosa's mind until she could no longer ignore it. Something about Viktor's carefully crafted belief seemed wrong. Yet Rosa stayed silent. She feared the consequences if she spoke. Viktor's anger was legendary, and who would believe a maid over a millionaire? Still, deep inside, Rosa sensed a storm brewing. One day, she knew, the truth about Eliza would no longer stay hidden. And when it came, it would shatter the Romanov mansion like glass. The night that changed everything began quietly. The mansion was hushed, its marble corridors echoing only with the ticking of a distant clock. Rosa carried a silver tray into Eliza's room, balancing a bowl of soup and a small basket of bread. She pushed the heavy oak door open softly, expecting to find the girl sitting by the window in her usual stillness. But Eliza was not sitting. Rosa froze in the doorway. Across the room, Eliza moved with a grace that startled her. She walked confidently toward her wardrobe, her delicate fingers brushing along the carved edges, pausing briefly as though admiring the details. Then, without fumbling or hesitation, she reached for a shawl folded neatly on the chair beside it. Her eyes, bright, alive, and focused, lingered on the garment as though she could see every thread. "Eliza," Rosa whispered before she could stop herself. The girl spun around, startled, her face draining of color. For a moment, silence thickened between them. Eliza's lips trembled. "Please," she whispered, her voice cracking, "don't tell my father." Rosa set the tray down, her hands shaking. "You can see?" she asked, barely daring to believe it. Eliza's shoulders slumped, and the secret she had carried for years came pouring out. "Since I was 5, the doctors were wrong, or maybe it was a miracle, I don't know. But I've been able to see for so long. I never told him because," her voice trailed off, then steadied. "Because if father knew, he would take everything from me. He would control me more than he already does." Rosa's heart ached at the fear in the girl's eyes. But why lie? Why pretend all these years? Tears welled in Eliza's eyes, making them glisten in the candlelight. "You don't understand, Rosa. My father needs me to be broken. My blindness makes me his excuse to protect me, to lock me away from the world. If he knows I can see, he'll force me into his world of business, politics, and power. I'll never be free." Rosa listened in stunned silence. It was not just a deception, it was survival. Every curtsy Eliza gave, every stumble she pretended to make, every braille page she read, while secretly devouring the hidden books in her room, all of it was a desperate performance to keep a fragile balance between herself and her father. "I want to live," Eliza whispered fiercely, her voice breaking. "I want to walk in the garden without guards watching me. I want to see the world, to travel, to laugh with friends I choose. But if he knows the truth, he'll never let me. Please, Rosa, promise me you won't tell." Rosa's throat tightened. She was just a maid, a powerless witness in a mansion of secrets. And yet, she suddenly carried the weight of Eliza's future in her hands. She took the girl's trembling fingers and pressed them gently. "Your secret is safe with me," Rosa said, though her heart pounded with fear. For the first time, Eliza allowed herself a fragile smile. But neither of them knew that secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, always find a way to unravel, and Viktor Romanov was not a man easily deceived. Secrets have a way of slipping through the cracks, no matter how carefully they are guarded. For Eliza, the secret she had carried for years was bound to surface sooner or later. It happened on a quiet afternoon. Viktor Romanov had returned from a tense meeting earlier than expected. He stormed through the halls of his mansion, his mind still tangled in negotiations and contracts. Seeking a rare moment of comfort, he went to his daughter's room unannounced. What he saw shattered everything he believed. Eliza stood by the far wall, her delicate fingers tracing the brushstrokes of a massive oil painting. But more than touch, it was the look in her eyes that froze him, wide, alive, and filled with wonder as she admired the vivid colors. She wasn't fumbling, wasn't pretending. She was seeing. "Eliza," Victor's voice was thunderous. She gasped and spun around, her face pale. Rosa, who had been nearby folding linens, dropped everything in shock. The room filled with silence thick enough to choke. "You can see," Victor said, his tone equal parts disbelief and fury. His fists clenched. "All these years, you deceived me. My own daughter." Eliza's legs trembled, but she stood tall, meeting his glare. "Father, please, listen." But he wasn't ready to listen. He turned his rage toward Rosa, eyes blazing. "You knew. You betrayed me." His voice cracked like a whip, and Rosa flinched under the weight of his fury. "I didn't betray you," Rosa said bravely, though her voice quivered. "I only wanted to protect her truth." Victor's chest heaved, his empire's master suddenly undone by the fragile honesty of two women. "Why, Eliza?" he demanded. "Why would you lie to me? Do you know what I've sacrificed for you?" Tears welled in Eliza's eyes, but her voice rang clear. "Because you never let me live. You locked me away, Father. You kept me from the world. You used my blindness as a chain to keep me close. I had no choice but to pretend, or you would have stolen my freedom too." Her words struck him harder than any business defeat ever could. For years, Victor had thought himself a protector, a savior. In truth, he had been her warden. The silence stretched, heavy with pain. Then something inside him broke, not in anger, but in realization. His face softened, the iron mask slipping. He saw not a deceiver before him, but a daughter who had suffered because of his love twisted into control. "I thought I was protecting you," he whispered, his voice hoarse. "And in doing so, you blinded yourself," Eliza said gently. For the first time in his life, Viktor Romanov had no defense, no argument, no power to wield. He lowered his head, shame flooding him. Slowly, he stepped forward and placed a trembling hand on Eliza's shoulder. "Forgive me," he said, his voice breaking. In that moment, the golden prison cracked. Eliza was no longer a helpless girl in her father's shadow, she was a young woman reclaiming her life. And Victor, humbled and stripped of pride, realized that all the wealth he had built meant nothing if it had cost him his daughter's trust. The truth had finally set them both free.